LWCAD LITE element. In this video, I will explain all about element objects in LWCAD library. First, I'll show you how to add element object into library. Then I will show you difference between single pivot and double pivot element object. Then I'll show you how to use intervals with elements objects. And finally, I'll show you how to set custom base offset. First, I'll show you how to add a simple object into element library with no additional options. I'll show you this process in all three platforms, 3D Studio Max, Cinema and Lightwave, so you can see this process is identical in every platform, and the rest of the video I will be using only 3D Studio Max. Let's start with 3D Studio Max. So first you need to select object which you are going to add into library. So it will be this simple handle. And you need to be sure this is polygonal mesh, editable mesh. If it is not, you need to convert it into editable mesh. Then you need to activate Add to Library tool from LWCAD tab, and you need to choose library where you are going to add this object. So I will choose element library. And now you need to choose viewport in the scene, which will be the base viewport for this object. So I will click into top viewport because this handle is lying on the top viewport, and this is the position we want to store in library. Now Add to Library tool is activated and you can save presets into library. I will create new testing library, new test folder, and just use Save Shape button here and save this as a handle max. In Cinema we'll do the same. So select object, then activate Add to Library tool, choose library type, element, and click to top viewport. And now you can save object into library. I will set test directory as active and save here handle C4D object with Save Shape button, and object is in library. Finally, in Lightwave you don't need to select object because if nothing selected, all is selected. So just use Add to Archviz tool. In numeric panel, set element library type and click into top viewport. Now just set testing folder as active and add shape. This is instead of Save Shape button, save it as handle Lightwave. And now you can see here in these thumbnails we have all three handles stored from different ports, and these handles are identical. Element pivots. In this section I will show you how you can add one or two additional pivots and store this into library, and how it is useful to use these additional pivots. So this simple handle we will add with a single pivot. You need to select object, activate Add to Library tool, set element library type, click into top viewport, and you can set now your pivot. For setting pivot, I recommend to use center snapping, and by clicking on Set Pivot OpenGL button, you can choose your pivot. So here I will click on this center. And now you have set a single pivot for this handle, and we can store it into library. Save shape as handle pivot 1. And this second handle we will add into library with two pivots. So first select handle object, activate Add to Library tool, set element library type, click to top viewport, and you can set first pivot by clicking on this point, and set pivot 2, clicking here. And you can see these pivots are connected with a red line, so this indicates the distance between two pivots. And we can save this into library. Handle pivot 2. Let's try these objects with element tool. First, this is object stored without any pivot, and pivot in this case is automatically set into left down corner. Next version is handle with single pivot defined here in the center of the handle. And as you can see, pivot means also handle of the tool. And last version is handle with two pivot defined. In this case, tool is transformed into 2-point handle, so you can drag with each pivot as a handle, and an object or handle is nicely stretched along this handle's line. Intervals. In element objects, we are setting intervals only in case we have both pivots, because with both pivots object is stretching and we can set intervals. Otherwise it doesn't make sense to set them. We add this object into element library again, but now with defined intervals. So select object, use add to library tool, set element library, choose viewport, set pivots, first pivot, second pivot, and now we define intervals. Intervals we need to define along the axis which we have stretching line. Stretching line is going from pivot 1 to pivot 2, so in our case it is axis X, so we will set intervals for axis X, and we define two intervals, here on the beginning and here on the end. These intervals means that handle or this object will be fixed or frozen in this part, and this dimension will be always same on the beginning and on the end, and the remaining part of the handle will be stretching. So when we will stretch the whole handle, these beginning and end parts will be always same dimension. So let's save this into library as a handle intervals. When we use this object with element tool, you can see when we stretch this handle, two pivot handle, the first part and second part of the handle is fixed and nothing is deformed. To compare this with previous version of handle, which was without intervals, it was handle pivot 2, you can see a big difference. Original handle is stretching and some parts which shouldn't be stretched are stretched and deformed. So this is the use of intervals for element object with two pivots. Finally, I'll show you the last option for adding object into element library, and it is a set base property with this OpenGL button. By default, the base is placed on the bottom of the object, but in this case of the handle, we need to adjust this base plane into this position like this. Now this is the base plane, and when we add this into library as a handle base, when we use this with element tool, you can see it is working properly. So when we apply object on the wall, it is sitting on the ground which we defined with set base option.